The rifle jammed on the first shot. 76 men laughed. 3 minutes later, they stopped breathing. They handed her a rusted weapon that hadn't fired in 15 years, gave her half the ammunition she needed, and told her to prove she belonged. What they didn't know was that Private Nora Calder wasn't just another recruit. She was a ghost, the last survivor of Task Force Black, and she'd come to Iron Peak for one reason: to hunt the man who sold her team to their deaths. This is the story of how one broken rifle exposed a spy ring no one knew existed. Before we begin, tell us, where are you watching from? And if you believe honor and courage still matter, help keep their legacy alive. The rifle jammed on the first shot. 76 men laughed. 3 minutes later, they stopped breathing. The Nevada sun burned over Iron Peak, turning the sand into white glass. Recruits stood shoulder to shoulder, rifles gleaming, sweat cutting down their necks. Only one soldier looked out of place: Private Nora Calder, the lone woman in the entire selection unit. Sergeant Major Cortez paced the line like a wolf inspecting prey. His boots dragged slow, deliberate, leaving trenches in the sand. When he reached Nora, he stopped, smirking. "You think this is some kind of diversity program, Calder?" Nora didn't answer. Her gaze stayed locked forward. Cortez wanted defiance or fear. He got neither. He lifted a rusted Car 15 from the rack. Its stock was cracked, the barrel eaten by corrosion. He dropped it in the sand at her feet. "This one hasn't fired in 15 years. If you can finish the kill house with that, maybe you belong here." The laughter that followed wasn't cruel, it was tradition, the kind that eats rookies alive. Lieutenant Evan Pike stood near the range tower, arms crossed, polished boots, cold grin. He watched her with the kind of amusement that hides calculation. When Cortez wasn't looking, Pike handed her a magazine. "Half load," he said, smirking. "Make it count." It felt light in her palm. 18 rounds, maybe less. She weighed it once, slid it into the weapon, and said nothing. As she knelt, her thumb caught on a jagged edge, a hairline crack along the feed lip. That wasn't wear. That was filed down. Her eyes flicked up. Pike was still watching, smiling. The whistle shrieked. "Kill house! Standard 6-minute limit!" "Civilian targets off limits!" Cortez barked. Nora adjusted the strap, checked the safety, and walked toward the steel door. Captain Dana Mallory watched from the observation deck beside General Helen Rourke. Mallory frowned. "They're setting her up to fail." Rourke didn't look away from the range. "Then, let's see what failure looks like." The buzzer blared. Nora stepped inside. The first target popped from behind plywood, armed silhouette, center mass exposed. She squeezed the trigger. Click! Jam! Laughter erupted from outside. Cortez folded his arms. "Called it." Mallory's jaw tightened. Inside the kill house, Nora exhaled once. Her hands moved on instinct. Tap, rack, tilt, fire. The rifle cracked loud, one clean hit to the heart of the target. Silence swept the range. She didn't stop. She advanced. Another target rose at 40 degrees. She fired without hesitation, adjusting half a notch left for drift. Perfect strike. Outside, Rourke lowered her binoculars. Mallory whispered, "That's not rookie training." Rourke replied, "No. That's combat memory." Nora's breathing slowed to metronome rhythm. 3 seconds between shots. 1 per heartbeat. Each target dropped like it had been waiting for her. Behind her, Echo 4, the team of washouts, tried to keep up. She gave them hand signals without words, moving like she'd done this 100 times before. Ortega, the youngest, just stared. By the halfway mark, she'd cleared 12 rooms. She fired fewer than 20 rounds, still half her mag full. Every shot precise, every transition silent. Pike's grin faltered. He leaned toward the radio tech. "Check that weapon. There's no way that thing's firing clean." The tech only muttered, "Sir." "She's making it look easy." The final door waited ahead, marked hostile. Her boots stopped just before the threshold. She listened. No sound. Only air moving through bullet holes. Then she moved. 2 steps. Pivot. Double tap. 3 targets down before the buzzer even finished screaming. The timer froze. 3:32. The hit ratio, 92%. 0 civilian hits. Cortez stared at the scoreboard like it had betrayed him. The laughter died. No one said a word. Mallory lowered her binoculars, exhaling softly. 3 minutes, she murmured. with a broken rifle. Rourke's eyes never left Nora. Not broken anymore. Nora stepped out into the sun, rifle still smoking faintly. Her uniform was coated in dust, but her movements were calm, surgical. She approached the armory table and placed the weapon down carefully. "Replace the firing pin," she said. "The feed lip's compromised, and the extractor springs weak. Don't issue this again." Then she saluted and walked away. Cortez's throat tightened. Pike just watched her go, expression flat, calculating. Whatever she wasn't supposed to be there. Rourke turned to Mallory. "Find out who trained her," she said. Mallory frowned. What if no one did? Down on the sand, Nora lifted her canteen, drank once, and stared back at the kill house door. The laughter from earlier echoed faintly, already fading into memory. She whispered under her breath, just loud enough for herself to hear. "They handed me a broken rifle to prove I'd break. I handed them back a perfect record." The wind shifted, carrying the sound of her words across the empty range. Iron Peak didn't know it yet, but a ghost had just entered their ranks. The desert cooled fast after sundown. By 2100 hours, Iron Peak was nothing but metal silhouettes under a cold sky. The laughter from earlier had vanished. Only silence and the rattle of wind through the hangars remained. In the armory, the lights buzzed low, pale against racks of rifles and crates of ammo. Private Nora Calder sat alone at a steel bench, field stripping the corroded Car 15. Each piece lay cleanly arranged, like surgical instruments in an operating room. The weapon that was supposed to humiliate her now lay in perfect order. She reassembled it without looking. Click, slide, twist. Her movements were automatic. Her eyes somewhere else. A memory flashed heat, dust, a crumbling building. Someone's voice yelling, "Calder, move!" Before the roof came down. Then the vision snapped away as the armory door creaked open. Lieutenant Evan Pike stepped inside, the sound of his boots echoing sharp across concrete. He locked the door behind him. The click was soft but deliberate. "Quite a show this morning," he said, tone low, almost friendly. Nora didn't look up. "Just following orders, sir." He smiled a practiced, thin-lipped smile. "Funny thing about your orders," Pike said. "I ran your file. It's got more holes than the targets you shot." Her hands paused mid-motion. Pike leaned on the table, invading her space. 8 months of black ink. No unit assignments, no commanding officer. That doesn't happen to rookies. Nora looked up, calm but cold. "Maybe the system glitched." Pike chuckled, the sound hollow. "Maybe someone glitched it for you." He let his eyes linger too long. "Or maybe you're not who you say you are." He reached out, brushing a strand of her hair from her shoulder. A mistake. In one motion, she twisted his wrist, slammed it flat against the bench, and locked his arm. He didn't even have time to shout. Her voice stayed calm. "You just assaulted an armed soldier." She released him before he could react. Pike stepped back, rubbing his wrist, breathing hard. "You think that proves something?" He spat. Nora returned to cleaning her weapon like nothing happened. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "I know what happened at Al-Qadir." Nora's hand froze. Her heart didn't race, but the silence that followed felt heavier than any explosion. "That operation's classified," she said slowly. Pike smiled wider. "Classified doesn't mean forgotten." He turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "They say only one made it out. Maybe ghosts like you should have stayed buried." The door slammed behind him. For 3 seconds, Nora's hand trembled. Just once. Just enough to remind her she was still human. Then she closed her fist until it stopped shaking. Outside, floodlights flickered on across the base. Training alarms echoed, signaling another simulated drill. But Nora wasn't headed there. She swapped her fatigues for a maintenance uniform, pulled a cap low over her eyes, and slipped into the night. Every corridor in Iron Peak was built to feel identical, a maze of shadows and echoes. She moved through it like she'd designed it herself. 2 guards passed at the far end of the hallway, talking quietly. Nora waited behind a stack of crates, motionless. When the footsteps faded, she moved again, silent, efficient, invisible. The comms wing glowed faint blue from server lights behind glass panels. She used a stolen keycard, one she'd lifted from Pike hours earlier. The door hissed open, air-conditioned and sterile inside. Rows of servers hummed like a heartbeat. She pulled a small black drive from her pocket government issue, unmarked. It fit perfectly into the port beneath the console. Code lines streamed across the screen, fast and encrypted. Transfer logs, digital signatures, account traces. Every single one carried Pike's clearance tag. Destination: Dubai. Then onward to an unregistered shell. Amounts: 480,000. Then 510,000. Attached file label: Spectre Protocol. Nora's pulse steadied. He wasn't just selling weapons data. He was selling operational patterns, movement intel, strike simulations. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, rare for Nevada. The glass reflected her face, blank, calm, but something deeper behind the eyes. This wasn't her first betrayal. It was just the newest. The lights in the hallway flickered. Footsteps again, heavier this time. Nora yanked the drive free, wiped the terminal logs in 3 quick keystrokes. The door handle rattled. She slid into the shadows behind the server rack, silent. Pike stepped in, muttering into his phone. Yes, she's still on base. No, she doesn't know yet. He stopped inches from where she stood hidden. I told Cortez we handle it tomorrow. The drill will take care of everything. He turned and left, unaware she was there. The door shut. Silence returned. Nora waited 10 seconds longer before moving. She tucked the drive into her vest pocket and slipped out through the maintenance door. Wind hissed through the corridor vents like the sound of old ghosts. Back in her quarters, she sat on her bunk, drive clutched in her hand. Moonlight cut across her face, tracing the faint scar near her temple. She whispered, "You sold them once. You won't do it again." She willed a fair. She pulled her shirt up slightly, just enough to see the edge of her tattoo, a black blade cutting through a circle, with the faint code beneath. E17, S7. Her voice dropped to a murmur. Specter 7, still breathing. The clock ticked past midnight. Somewhere on the base, a loudspeaker crackled. New training phase begins at 0500. Nora leaned back, eyes open, waiting. Tomorrow, they'd try to bury her again. This time, she planned to choose the grave. Dawn came without warmth. Iron Peak shimmered under a thin layer of dust and frost, caught between night and morning. The loudspeakers barked new orders before the recruits even finished breakfast. Hostage recovery drill. All teams report to staging range. The words echoed down the barracks hall. Nora Calder was already dressed, laces tight, expression unreadable. In the mirror, she caught her own reflection. Her eyes didn't look like a rookie's anymore. They looked like someone measuring time in threats, not minutes. She slipped the black drive deeper into her boot, out of sight. On the range, Cortez strutted with his clipboard, pretending the cold didn't bite. His voice cracked through the wind. Today's test separates soldiers from statistics. Fail, and you're done. Lieutenant Pike stood off to the side, arms folded, sunglasses reflecting the desert glare. He smiled when he saw Nora step into formation. It wasn't a friendly smile. Mallory watched from the tower, uneasy. Something in the setup felt wrong. Too many loaded crates, too many cameras, too few instructors. Her instincts whispered this wasn't standard training anymore. Cortez threw a tarp off a steel case, revealing simulation gear and a 210-pound dummy wrapped in harness straps. "This," he said, slapping the mannequin, "is your downed pilot. Bring him back alive. Extraction point red flag zone." Ortega raised his hand nervously. "Sir, are we using live rounds?" Cortez grinned. "Wouldn't want you thinking this was safe, Specialist." The recruits laughed, but not comfortably. Nora said nothing. Her focus was locked on Pike. He was whispering to Cortez, handing him something, a folded paper. Maybe a code list. She couldn't hear the words, but she caught the tone. Urgent. Sharp. Then Cortez nodded once. The teams broke off. Alpha to the left valley, Echo 4 to the canyon run. As Nora checked her weapon, Ortega stepped closer. "You think this is another setup?" She glanced at him. "It's always a setup." He tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. Her tone wasn't joking. She slid a fresh mag into her rifle full this time, but as the bolt closed, she felt it. A resistance. She popped it out, inspected the edge, hairline crack. Same as before. Someone had tampered with it. Again. She didn't show it. Instead, she swapped the mag quietly with Ortega's spare, nodding for him to keep silent. He didn't understand why, but he obeyed. The whistle blew. Both teams moved out, sand erupting under boots. The simulated village stretched ahead, a maze of walls, vehicles, and painted civilians. Half a mile away, Pike watched through binoculars, radio pressed to his mouth. "Activate Phase 2, he ordered. A tech at the console flipped a switch. Inside the course, hidden charges armed under the sand. Training simulation but wired with live detonators. Nora didn't know yet. Echo 4 advanced low and tight. Nora led point, scanning corners, calling short commands. Her movements weren't rehearsed. They were instinct tactical patterns no recruit should know. They reached the target zone in 5 minutes. The dummy lay in the open, half buried under debris. Something about it made her pause. She crouched, running her gloved hand across its chest rig. The fabric felt wrong, heavier, wired. Her fingers brushed a thin copper thread looping under the harness. A detonator line? Military grade. Her pulse didn't change, but her jaw tightened. This wasn't an exercise. Behind her, Ortega whispered. "Ma'am?" She looked over her shoulder, calm but firm. "Don't move, don't speak." Then she cut the wire, slow, precise, like diffusing memory itself. A tremor ran through the sand, distant thunder, or a charge misfiring. Mallory leaned over the observation rail. "General, did you authorize explosives in this drill?" Rourke frowned. "No one did. She ready when the green for Mestivizimero." Down below, Cortez adjusted his earpiece, muttering. He didn't notice Mallory watching from above, or the camera pointed straight at him. She keyed her mic. "Base command, monitor Cortez's channel. He's transmitting off-grid." Nora lifted the dummy onto her shoulder, testing its weight. Every step back toward extraction felt heavier. She motioned for Echo 4 to move. Pike's voice came over the radio, tone casual, mocking. "Echo 4, how's our ghost doing? You're ahead of schedule. Don't drop the payload." Nora froze mid-step. Payload. He knew. Her thumb brushed the detonator pin still attached to the harness. It wasn't armed, not yet, but it could be remote triggered. Her instincts screamed, "He's going to blow it." A flash erupted 30 yards behind them. The shockwave hit like a hammer, throwing sand and bodies into the air. Ortega yelled, covering his face. Nora hit the ground, rolling under debris. Her ears rang, heart steady. Smoke poured across the training field like ink in water. She dragged Ortega up, checked for wounds. "Stay low, keep moving," she ordered. He stared at her half in awe, half in fear. Up on the tower, Mallory slammed her hand against the console. "Cut the simulation." I repeat, cut all power. But the screen stayed black. Someone had overridden control. Nora pressed her comm. Static. The signal was jammed. She looked toward the tower, saw Pike lowering his binoculars, expression cold. That was confirmation enough. She turned to her team. "No more drills. This is survival now." They followed her into the smoke, trusting her without knowing why. Behind them, Cortez barked into his mic. "Trigger failed. She's still alive." The words carried over the wind. Rourke's face drained of color as the transmission hit the loudspeaker. Mallory whispered. "He said trigger failed." Rourke exhaled hard. "They tried to kill her." Out in the chaos, Nora pushed forward, clutching the dummy tight. Her knee flared with pain. Shrapnel from an older war reminding her it was still there. She kept walking. Every explosion behind her was another lie uncovered. Every step forward was a refusal to die quietly. And as the smoke closed in, her voice came low and calm over the comm. They wanted a ghost. They're about to meet one. Smoke rolled through the canyon like a living thing. The desert wind couldn't clear it fast enough, and visibility dropped to nothing. Echo 4, moved by instinct, not sight, following Nora's voice cutting through the static. "2 left turns, keep formation," she said, tone level, almost calm. Her shoulder burned from the dummy's weight, but she didn't slow. Every step forward felt like wading through a minefield built by betrayal. Above them, alarms blared across Iron Peak. General Rourke shouted into her radio. "Lockdown range control! Find Pike and Cortez now!" But in the chaos of overlapping signals, no one could tell who was listening to whom. Cortez ran the perimeter like a cornered wolf, yelling orders that no one obeyed. He grabbed one of the comtechs by the vest. "Open gate Delta! She's heading that way!" Up in the tower, Captain Mallory ignored him. Her focus stayed on the monitor's heat signatures moving in the smoke. One bright mark, moving against the chaos. "Nora." Down on the field, Nora signaled with 2 fingers, "Stop." She set the dummy down, brushed dust off its chest harness, and checked the detonator again. The trigger light blinked once, faint red. "Ortega," she said softly. "Get me your multi-tool." He hesitated, hands shaking. "That thing's wired to blow." She met his eyes. "Only if we let them push the button." She worked fast. One cut, two twists, careful tension. The red light flickered, then died. For the first time, Ortega exhaled. Another explosion rocked the west wall, closer this time. Chunks of concrete rained down, echoing across the valley. They were boxed in. Pike's voice came through the loudspeakers, smooth and taunting. "Nice work, Lieutenant. You're ahead of schedule as always." Nora's head snapped up. The title wasn't supposed to exist here. Ortega looked at her, confused. "Lieutenant?" She didn't answer. There was no point denying it anymore. Instead, she lifted the dummy again and started walking toward the extraction line. Cortez's voice cut in next, desperate. "Pike, shut it down! They'll trace it!" Pike ignored him, speaking into his headset. "Initiate final phase." Up in the control tower, Mallory and Rourke watched as the system rebooted. The red zone on the screen expanded. The simulation was now targeting Echo 4 directly. Mallory cursed. "He's converted the range AI to lethal mode." Rourke's jaw locked. "Override it manually. Now." "Working on it." On the field, automatic turrets hidden in the sand whirred to life. Sensors rotated, scanning heat. Ortega shouted, "Contact! Right side!" Nora dropped the dummy behind a crate and raised her rifle. 3 bursts short. Controlled. The turrets fell silent. Smoke rising from their barrels. Echo 4 pushed forward under covering fire. They were half a football field from the extraction flag when a new voice came through Mallory's. "Calder, hold your position. Reinforcements inbound." "Negative," Nora replied. "We're too exposed. I'm ending this now." She switched frequencies to Pike's private line. "You're not walking away from this, Lieutenant." His reply came cold and amused. "You think this was about killing you?" "No, Nora. This was about confirming you were still alive." Her pulse stayed steady. "Then I guess your confirmation just signed your arrest." A burst of gunfire cracked across the ridge, real weapons this time. Pike's mercenaries. Unmarked, moving fast through the haze. Echo 4 ducked low, returning fire. Nora led them toward the extraction zone, shooting, reloading, moving like a machine built for war. Each motion precise, measured. She fired, pivoted, shouted orders. They followed without hesitation. One round grazed her leg, tearing fabric. But she didn't slow. She saw Pike on the far ridge, lowering a rifle, her old Car 15. The one meant to fail. It gleamed under the smoke-streaked sun. He fired. The bullet screamed past her, missing by inches, hitting the dummy instead. The harness sparked. The detonator flared alive again. Without thinking, she lunged, grabbed the wire, and yanked it free just as the explosive triggered. A burst of heat scorched the sand. Echo 4 hit the ground, ears ringing. When the smoke cleared, Nora was still standing. Her sleeve was burned, her eyes fixed on Pike through the haze. He froze when he saw her still breathing. On the tower, Mallory finally broke the lockout. "System offline!" she shouted. Rourke raised her radio. "Send the MPs. Bring him in alive." A helicopter cut through the sky seconds later, kicking dust and debris across the range. MPs poured out, surrounding Pike and Cortez before they could flee. One of the MPs was Colonel Adrian Keats, the man who'd built Task Force Spectre. He barked orders, voice booming. "Stand down, both of you!" Pike reached for his sidearm, but Keats already had his drawn. Cortez froze, realizing too late the game was over. The broadcast speakers crackled across Iron Peak. "Lieutenant Evan Pike, you are under arrest for espionage and attempted murder of U.S. personnel." Every recruit on the base heard it. Nora reached the extraction line, dragging the half-melted dummy beside her. The scoreboard timer blinked red, then froze. 3:48, complete. The range fell silent. Rourke descended the tower as MPs cuffed Pike. Her gaze found Nora through the settling smoke. "You've got something to say for yourself, Lieutenant?" Nora unzipped her collar, lifting the edge of her shirt just enough. The tattoo caught the sun, a black blade cutting through a circle. Beneath it, faint numbers read, E17, S7. The recruits watching gasped. Master Chief Hale stepped forward, removing his cap. Specter 7, he said quietly. She saved my unit in Ramadi. Rourke nodded once. Then, to the crowd, stand at attention. The entire base did. No applause, no noise. Just silence the kind earned, not demanded. Cortez was led away in cuffs, head down, eyes hollow. Pike spat blood into the dirt, still glaring at Nora. She looked back once, expression steady. You wanted a ghost, she said. Now you have one. The helicopter rotors rose again, stirring the desert into a storm of sand and sound. Iron Peak had been cleansed by truth, but the wind carried whispers of something darker. And as the dust settled, the legend of Specter 7 had finally returned to life. 3 days later, Iron Peak stood quiet under a gray sky. The desert wind had lost its bite, carrying only the echo of what happened. Every building felt lighter cleansed, but no one smiled. The range was sealed off, still scarred from the explosions. Teams rebuilt walls and swept the sand, pretending it was just another training accident. Only the scorch marks on the ground told the truth. Inside the hangar, Nora Calder worked alone. The broken car 15 lay on the bench, stripped clean again. She'd replaced every damaged part, polished every inch until it gleamed like it never failed. She checked the barrel alignment one last time and whispered, "You've earned your peace." Outside, the sound of boots echoed steady, purposeful. General Helen Rourke entered, coat half-buttoned, expression unreadable. "I figured you'd be gone by now," Rourke said. Nora didn't look up. "I don't leave until the job's done." Rourke stepped closer. "You exposed a spy ring and survived 2 assassination attempts. I'd call that done." Nora tightened a screw on the rifle. "Pike wasn't working alone," she said quietly. "Someone funded him. Someone higher." Rourke nodded slowly. "We're calling it Operation Frostline. 3 other bases flagged. Command wants you to lead the next sweep." Nora set the rifle down, finally meeting Rourke's eyes. "Then this isn't over." "No," Rourke said. "But you don't have to fight alone anymore." For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't cold, it was heavy, filled with unspoken respect. Then Nora smiled faintly. "They don't need another ghost here, General. They need someone who still belongs to the living." Rourke's expression softened. "Then promise me one thing, stay visible." Nora shook her head. "Visibility gets people killed." Then she extended a hand. Rourke shook it, firm, like soldiers who'd both seen the other side of hell. Outside, the recruits were gathering near the mess hall. No ceremony, no speeches, just quiet nods as Nora passed. Even Cortez's old platoon watched from a distance, unsure whether to salute or look away. Ortega approached, holding a small metal box. "Ma'am," he said, shyly, "the team wanted you to have this." Inside was a silver challenge coin, one side engraved with the unit's insignia, the other marked Specter 7. Nora turned it over in her hand, the metal cool against her palm. "Earned, not given," Ortega said. She nodded once. "Then keep it. You're the one staying." He hesitated. "Will you come back?" She looked toward the horizon. "If the work's done, and if it's not?" he asked. "Then you'll finish it." "Could one's lashen Maidan?" Ortega smiled, not the nervous grin from before, but the quiet pride of someone who'd seen what real leadership looked like. They didn't hug. Soldiers rarely did, but the silence between them said everything. That night, the sky above Iron Peak was crystal clear. Nora sat outside her quarters, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee gone cold. Beside her lay the restored rifle and the small cross Ortega had given her after the chaos. The cross caught a glint of starlight. Her thumb traced its edge, remembering voices she hadn't heard in years. 17 names, Al-Qadir's ghosts all gone except her, she whispered. Still breathing, still moving. Then she stood, packing light. 2 uniforms, a sidearm, the drive marked Spectre Protocol. No medals, no mementos. Ghosts don't travel heavy. At 0500, rotor blades broke the silence. A black helicopter descended over the range, stirring up dust and old echoes. Rourke and Mallory waited by the pad, hands in their coat pockets. Mallory called out, "Still no ceremony, huh?" Nora smirked. "Wouldn't feel right." Rourke stepped closer. "Fort Carson's waiting. You'll be briefed en route." As she climbed the ramp, Rourke raised her voice over the roar. "Why go undercover again? Why not lead openly this time?" Nora turned, the morning sun cutting across her face. Because people listen when they think you're nobody, she said. Then, she disappeared into the aircraft. The helicopter lifted, climbing above Iron Peak. Below, the soldiers who once doubted her now stood at attention. No applause, just rows of quiet salutes. Carried by wind. Inside the cabin, Nora unfolded her sealed orders. Fort Carson. 2 weeks. Operation Frostline. She tucked the file away just as her sat phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Static filled the line. Then a voice distorted. Mechanical. Specter 7. We know you're alive. Nora's jaw tightened. Who is this? A pause. Then, Al-Qadir sends its regards. The line went dead. She stared out the window, the desert shrinking below her. Then, quietly, she slipped the cross around her neck. Pike's words echoed in her memory. You won't stop them all. Her reply came like a whisper to herself. Maybe not, but I'll stop enough. The helicopter banked toward the horizon. Below, Iron Peak shimmered in dawn's first light. The broken rifle rested on Rourke's desk, polished and silent. Etched into its stock were 5 words. Excellence needs no perfect conditions. Nora's voice came over the radio, steady and calm. Specter 7, en route, end to end to the fresh. A pause, then. They think exposure ends a ghost. It doesn't. It just gives her new targets. The signal faded. The sun climbed higher, washing the desert in gold. And somewhere above that light, the ghost of Iron Peak flew toward her next war. If you enjoyed the story, consider sending a super chat to help bring more stories like this. Now, click on the video on the screen to hear another story that's just as powerful and captivating, with courage, sacrifice, and a choice that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about duty and justice.